Super Rugby Friday games. This video is a little bit later than normal, but here we go. 3 games on the Friday. The first one was not late. It was early, exceptionally early, with the Sunwolves having to play their home game in Australia. And then the normal time games for the Crusaders and the Waratahs games. A couple of blowouts and one game which was unexpectedly close. I've seen the second two in their entirety, and I've watched the highlights of the Brumbies game. So, as always, you guys let me know your thoughts at the end, and yeah, we'll go through the games. The first one, Sunwolves Brumbies. Like I mentioned, it was early. There was kind of a double header at Wynn Stadium with the Waratahs Chiefs game. We originally scheduled with as kind of an evening game. This one ended up being played in quite the early afternoon. I think pre 2 o'clock, like 1:45. So the crowd did seemingly slowly filter in as things kind of went on. Like it was pretty sparse at the start, but during the highlights, which I watched, which was about 10 minutes of the game, each time there seemed to be a few more people kind of arriving, I guess, as kids finish school and people finish work and whatnot. So that was nice. A very nice touch is the fact that they kept the howl, the awoo, at kickoff for the Sunwolves. So that was a nice touch. The Brumbies were in their away kit, so all very nice touches to make the Sunwolves guys feel at home, I guess. But it was all Brumbies early. Lonergan got a try. Valtini seemed to be everywhere in this game. He was a part of that one. Miller got one from a huge gap inside ball. The Brumbies did concede a try to Ma'afu just before halftime, like 4 minutes before halftime. Oops, there goes my pen. 4 minutes before halftime, but that's because they did a high tackle. Sunwolves kick for touch, line out more, and then try from there. So Sunwolves do well to take the chance. So at one point it was 14 points to 7, but just before halftime, Valtini got his try to make it 21-7 halftime. Second half, the onslaught kind of continued. Kuringer only got 1 meters out. Valtini had a good run after Banks had set him up with a good run, and he kind of no-look passed to Kata, who got the try just 40 points to 7. Stolberg got one in return for the Sunwolves to make it 40-14, and then Powell got one at the death. So, yeah, I didn't even mention Pulu's one, did I? Pulu, his little step try that was approved by the TMO. So, yeah, man, it was... And you feel like, from what I've seen, the Brumbies probably could have gone a bit more. Like, between 56 and 81, there were no tries for the Brumbies. So, a big dry spell. I feel like they probably could have gone a bit harder. But bonus point win, top of the log. Certainly can't complain. Stats for the game. Brumbies run meters 546. Sunwolves 238. So, dominant possession. Brumbies 59%. Territory. Brumbies 60%. Tackling Brumbies 87%, make 101. The Sunwolves, despite conceding almost 50 points, were actually tackling at 80%, which is not bad. But 152 tackles had to be made and quite a few missed. Banks had 9 defenders beaten, 2 clean breaks, and 49 run meters. Downey for the Sunwolves had 16 out of 16 tackles and was all round pretty busy. But, yeah, man, Brumbies, nice result. Did exactly what they would have set out to do, which is a big bonus point win. Can't ask for much more than them for that. The Sunwolves have been on the back of a few hidings now, and that unfortunately looks like it will be kind of the standard. They might pick up another win, but it's not looking all that likely for a team which, I mean, with the coronavirus thing, don't really have a home base, so they're kind of a bunch of nomads as well, which doesn't exactly help. So it's probably going to get worse before it gets better for those guys. The next one, Crusaders Reds. I knew the result, which is a bit disheartening, although I got home after I went out last night. I got home in time to see the finish of this game. So the finish of the game, which was quite dramatic, I got to see that live, which was quite nice. And then I went back and rewatched the game from the start this morning. So, yeah, 24 points to 20. You got to say the Crusaders would have been expected to score more points than that. Not necessarily points, but at least win by more than 4 points. And if you look at the fact that the Reds had a 0% goal kicking percentage and they scored one more try than the Crusaders, they could have won by 4 points. They could have drawn if they were at 50%. I mean, the Crusaders are a team that even if the Reds had scored for their conversions, you feel like the Crusaders probably still find a way to win. They did enough, but you would have thought they would have done better. I also would have thought there would have been a better crowd. The crowd seemed pretty average. The one end of the ground was virtually empty. I mean, your team wins every time, so there's not that much excuse not to go play. Let's go see them play. I mean, when I go see the Blues play, they often get beaten. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just tiring watching a team that wins all the time. I don't know. Maybe ticket prices are too high. Maybe that stadium's not that nice. People tell me that stadium's basically scaffolding. So, yeah, it could be lots of reasons. Anyway, it seemed to be all down the Reds' end early. Eventually, the pressure pays off. Moody gets a try. Makes it 7-0. Although Waisatia gets one in return for the Reds. And it's kind of the theme of this game that the Reds tended to strike back before the Crusaders were able to get too far ahead. Waisatia got one to 7-5. Crusaders kicked the penalty 10-5. Barrett, Scott got an intercept, which was fun to see. But eventually they got a second try through Wilson, who had a really good game. TMO checked it and it was all good. But yeah, it was 10-all at half time. Crusaders did get a yellow card, and you feel like the Reds didn't really take much of that opportunity early on. The Crusaders even scored during the yellow card. There was a try to bridge in the second half. The Reds did come back and score a try at the end of the yellow card period, but they kind of wasted the first 5 minutes and then conceded a try. So that's kind of one of those chances you got to take. If you get one against the Crusaders, you got to be on form. So they lost the yellow card period 7-5. The try for Fainganuku was absolutely fantastic. It was pretty much length of the field, great passing, 24 points to 15, and the Reds weren't without some kind of fantastic stuff of their own. Like they did a line-out move to set up Spate's try on 72 minutes. They had a line-out move in their own 22 and went length of the field and scored. So both sides, as Justin Marshall would put it, with a bit of razzle-dazzle, which would have been nicer for more people to see if the crowd had been a bit bigger. But anyway, the end of the game, as the Reds were trying to run it out of their own 22 and kind of going backwards, they went through a ton of phases. Eventually, Reese stripped the ball clear and went in for a try at the death, which would have denied the Reds a bonus point, losing bonus point, which would have been a travesty. But I was kind of pleased that TMO caught that there was a knock-on after the strip. So the strip caused the knock-on. So that try was chalked off because the Reds deserve a bonus point there, man. If you can get within 4 points of the Crusaders and outscore them in tries at their home ground, that is not an easy thing to do. So I'm pretty pleased the Reds managed to get a losing bonus point. But, I mean, the Crusaders were hanging on. Like, at one point, Tupou was seemingly clear, and Mitch Drummond. And the size discrepancy between those two guys doesn't get a lot bigger. Tupou's huge, and Drummond not so much, but he managed to bring Tupou down. Good bit of tackling on like 75 minutes. So, yeah. Crusaders always good value for their wins, but they probably would have been predicted to be winning by a wee bit more than that. So like I said, 3 tries to 4, so the Reds outscored them on tries, but 0% goal kicking for the Reds, 100% for the Crusaders. They had 3 conversions and a penalty. Run meters 597 for the Crusaders, 504 for the Reds, so there's not a lot in that, 100 meters, just under. Reds 58% possession, 60% territory, so good value for their losing bonus point. The Crusaders line-out though is 100%. Reds one was a little bit costly. They missed a few, 75%. So 1 and 4 going astray is not ideal. Tackling percentage, both sides pretty even. 84 for the Crusaders, 85 for the Reds. Reds had to make fewer, 142 to the Crusaders, 221. Penalties conceded, Crusaders conceded more, 13-8, but that's pretty normal. They tend to concede more penalties in their opposition. Scott Barrett was an immense rock of a man, 25 tackles. He did miss 3, but man, 25. quarter of the way to a hundy. Christie had 21 out of 21, which is maybe even more impressive. Liam Wright for the Reds had 23 out of 25. I just looked at the defensive stats because, yeah, both sides were impressive in that department. But, yeah, neither scrum could really get on top. They were both conceding penalties. So, yeah, fascinating game. I feel a bit sorry for the Reds. They couldn't continue that Aussie winning streak here over New Zealand teams. They got a lot closer than I thought many of us thought they would. But the Crusaders do what they do, and they find a way to win most games, especially at home. So, credit to them for managing to get the result there. And the last one was the Waratahs against the Chiefs. Interesting kind of game of two halves. Because, the Chiefs had a flying start. Sol Kula was in a clean break within seconds in this game. They won a penalty, made it 3-0. Another one made it 6-0. They missed the third one to make it 9-0, but then Stevenson got a try from a line-out move. Bit of space out wide. 13-0 early. It looks like the Chiefs are going to run away with it. Somehow the Waratahs switch on. Bill gets a try after a Waratahs penalty, and the Chiefs had been marched 10 as well. So that let the Waratahs get a wee bit closer. Eventually they get the try. It's from a little Carmichael Hunt inside ball, so 7 points to 13. Hooper gets held up on the half-hour mark, but a couple of minutes later, Dempsey goes in for a try. The TMO double check because there was a bit of a bobble, but it was all good. So the Waratahs went in, believe it or not, 14 points to 13 up at halftime. And the Chiefs don't like being up at halftime, eh? They were behind against the Blues, they were behind against the Crusaders, now behind against the Tars, and they went on to win all 3 games. That's got to be frustrating for Warren Gatland, but I guess if you're winning, you don't really care too much. Second half, they literally just interview one of the Waratahs coaching staff, like, what are you worried about the Chiefs? And the guy's like, what are we not worried about? They can do everything really well. And then the floodgates open, man. Weber got 2 tries, one from a little undefended, ruck. There was nobody behind it, kind of marking him, so he just sniped straight through. And then another one, a Boschia turnover. Stevenson, no look pass to Weber. It was a thing of beauty. You should watch the highlights of this game if you haven't seen it. So I made it 25 points to 14 in no time. Another one to Wainui. Kane and Cruden went off just before the hour. So it wasn't even necessarily all the big guns for the Chiefs at that point. Boschia got one. Alemalo got one. And ALB got one at the death. So, yeah, man, the Chiefs just absolutely ran riot in that second half. They must have got a bollocking from Warren or something. I don't know. But the Waratahs, after a seemingly good kind of 20 minutes at the second half of the first half, the second half itself just didn't show up. Couldn't score a point. And conceded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tries. It was pretty embarrassing. So, the crowd was decent though, I thought. First, I think Super Rugby game, Wollongong, they said the crowd was decent. It had built up a bit since the previous game between the Sunwolves and the Brumbies, but they only got to see their team play for a good 20 minutes. The rest of it was pretty leaky. Final stats, run meters 403 to 520. It's 520 to the Chiefs, so pretty expensive game. The Waratahs actually had more possession and territory, but they had more turnovers conceded. They weren't tackling well. They're tackling below 80% at 79. The Chiefs were a respectable 85. Penalties conceded was even 10 each. Stevenson had 81 run meters, 3 clean breaks, 4 defenders beaten, a try and a try assist. He was magic. He was, even if I don't like his bang try celebrations. He's kept them a bit more low key this year. Ram for the Waratahs actually had 88 run meters, 3 clean breaks, and 4 defenders beaten, but I feel like it was within a pretty limited number of minutes, to be honest. But yeah. Like I mentioned, the Chiefs, very good comeback. Some of the Waratahs passing in the second half was absolutely dreadful. The Waratahs did blow 1 try, and they started both halves really poorly. They were able to right it in the first half, but not so much in the second. At one point, I'm sure Phil Kern said something about he knew that the Chiefs won the toss and picked to start with some on one of the sides because they knew the wind was going to change. It was just the most bizarre comment. That's the reason that the Waratahs are shipping all these points in the second half? I don't think so. I don't think the Chiefs are divining the gods of the weather. They're just very good, man. And if you drop tackles, they're going to concede points. Yeah, like I mentioned, decent crowd, but bad result for the Tars. Great result for the Chiefs. They are looking back in business. But yeah, those were the games for Friday. I managed to get around to watching them, which was nice. Do let me know your thoughts. What did you guys think of these games? I need to go and buy a new whiteboard marker because the black one is on its last legs. I had to switch to the blue one, which by the end of this, also on its last legs. But yeah. Cheers, guys. Drop us a like for me going to buy a new whiteboard marker. That'd be appreciated. Patreon down there as well if you want to buy me a new whiteboard marker. But yeah. Take it easy, guys, and talk to you again soon. See you later.